Welcome into the Thunder basketball universe. We are recording this on Tuesday, October 29th, which means the Thunder has 3 games under its belt here in the regular season. It also means we're just a couple of days away from Halloween. This is just like an awesome time of year, I feel like, for the NBA. There's a lot happening, a lot of games happening every single day. And I love that we're getting close to Halloween because just a little insight on our broadcast. We always use this time to really get into the debate of what the best Halloween candy is. And I feel like it's something that Michael Cage looks forward to at the start of every season.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how our producer Steve Melton's going to kind of switch things up and change it up, because we had the big debate last year on the broadcast, but there's got to be like a little curveball or wrinkle he throws in here. I'm trying to figure out what it's going to be.
What made me mad is that I was the only one that chose like a fruity candy. I said Skittles.
That's true. Yeah.
And everyone gave me crap for it for like the next 2 months. We're at Christmas and they're still saying, oh, Lawson and her Skittles. You like gotta have Skittles.
Well, I mean, everybody clowns me for saying Milky Way, but it's like,
that's one of the most iconic candies.
It's undeniably a great candy.
Yes, it's up there with Snickers as like just go-to Halloween candies.
In the packages of like the elites, it just is. It's in that mix. So I mean, you know, what can you do?
Have you guys thought about what the kids are going to be for Halloween?
We didn't really have to think about it this year because they are now entering a phase where they can tell us
choose themselves
what they want to be.
Amazing.
Yes. So there are some cartoon characters. These are like new agey modern cartoons, not the ones that you and I grew up with. So we've got one PJ Mask. And we've got one Paw Patroller. So if you see us out and about, you'll know exactly who you've bumped into.
Solid. Yeah. So good. You know, I was thinking about what a good Halloween costume would be. And if we were in the office for Halloween, the Thunder office always just goes so all out for Halloween. And I was like, I think the spookiest thing that I could be is I could get like 3 of my good friends and we could just be the Thunder perimeter defenders.
Yeah, that's great.
Let's get a Lou Dort, a Cason Wallace, an Alex Caruso, and Aaron Wiggins.
5, 9, 22. Just get us some jerseys and
that
we'll be good.
Is scary. Yeah. That is a scary sight. And I think, the Thunder's put that on display, certainly, in its first 3 games of the season. So let's get into it real quick. Let's get into our stats of the week because there's a lot to take away from these first 3 games, especially when it came to the numbers. What's your stat, Nick?
3. Just 3
games that we've played.
That's part of it. Yeah. And in those 3 games,
3 wins.
3 wins. Also 3 different starting lineups. The Thunder has had a different starter in that spot alongside Shea, Lou Dort, J-Dub, Chet Holmgren. They've had somebody different in that spot each of the first 3 games so far this season. Isaiah Joe, Cason Wallace, Aaron Wiggins have each started at that spot. You could run down a laundry list of other guys that are certainly candidates to make that 5th spot as well. Yeah. Obviously, the Thunder still has some guys that are returning from injury also. So that's a good point. There's even more possibilities out there. But you know, Shea was asked about that after the game, and I thought what he had to say was really interesting after the game against Atlanta. He said, you know, that ability is what makes us different. And oftentimes we hear that what makes you different in this league, what makes you unique, is what makes you great. And this is a extra advantage the Thunder has. He said, Coach makes it clear what our roles are. No matter the lineup, we're still supposed to do our role. And that's what allows us to have different lineups, is the way that we're constructed. We have so many guys that are versatile, and in the different lineups, there's no drop-off. So there's the same rhythm, and that is a big luxury. And to have your star player talking about this shifting lineups like that is pretty special, because most times guys that are at that level, you know, historically, if you look over the course of the NBA, those guys are pretty rigid about who they want to play with, how many minutes they want to be on the floor, when they want to be on the floor. They like to, you know, be in
know what to expect
in these boxes. Shea, he's easy, man. He just
go with
flows.
The flow.
And so it's so cool to hear him say that, and also to have a recognition. He says our roles. You know, a lot of times superstars don't talk about having roles. Yeah. Here he is. He understands what his role is on the team. Yeah. And just because that might look bigger, if he doesn't play his role, nobody else can play their role the way that they need to also.
It's a really good point. And I love that you brought Shea's perspective into this, because that's one that we don't think about. When we think about lineups, we think about rotations. That's typically like, what's in coach's brain for this? You know, like what's his thought process? And to hear Shea talk about it in that way speaks to the mentality of the whole team. Yeah. Right? Because everyone understands if you have that jersey on and you're sitting on the bench, you are expected to be able to fit into any role or any lineup, any rotation or player combination under the sun. You got to be ready for it. If you're wearing a Thunder uniform, you got to be ready for anything. And Coach Dagnall pointed out, this is what's given the Thunder kind of a competitive advantage, right? Because if the team changes it up every single night, then the opposing team doesn't know what to expect.
Right.
If it's going to be a smaller starting lineup, if it's going to be a really big starting, no one knows what to expect. They can't just look back on, historically and be like, oh yeah, I think they're going to go with, it's probably going to be an Aaron Wiggins night for, there's no telling. There really isn't. And that's something that the Thunder has used to their advantage and something that they've incorporated into kind of the mentality and the ethos of this team over the course of time.
And, at a core level, every player on the Thunder does a certain number of things on the floor. Now, each player, of course, has their own strengths and maybe are certain different levels of those things that they do. But there's great roster flexibility because there's great positional versatility. And so to what you're saying, like some nights it's just going to look a little bit taller or a little bit shorter or a little bit faster or a little bit more strong.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day,
the skill sets are all there.
Right. Those guys are going to be able to shoot. They're going to be able to pass. They're going to be able to make decisions. They're going to be able to put the ball on the deck. They're going to be able to defend, throw an outlet pass. They're going to be able to do all of these things that are sort of required.
Yeah.
Required reading to be a Thunder player, basically. It's like, can you do all of these multi-skill things on the floor?
All these guys meet the prerequisites to wear a Thunder jersey. That's a great one.
Yeah.
All right, great stat, Nick. Great stack. Yours is so simple. Mine is not.
I was noticing on the rundown, there's decimals and there's
plus minus.
Yeah.
So, okay, it looks very complicated. On our rundown, I have 20.7 minus 10.7 equals 10. And that math is correct, right? I went to school for...
Yes. You didn't take a lot of math classes.
No, I didn't. I didn't. But this is... Do you want to take a stab at what it is?
I have... Can I guess?
Yeah, okay. Please. Right.
I don't know for sure, but this is looking like turnover differential to me.
Great job, Gallo.
Nice. Okay,
great job, guy.
All right.
Okay, so yes, this is the amount of turnovers that the Thunder has forced on average over the first 3 games. 20.7. That leads the NBA.
That's a ridiculous number.
That is an insane number, especially just looking at the teams that the Thunder has gone up against. This is a really, really cool number to see. What's even cooler, let's just layer that on. The amount of turnovers that the Thunder has committed themselves. Only 10. They're right, like, that is such a good number.
Also ridiculously low. I mean, those two numbers, if they were to spread out over the course of the season, they would probably be first in the league in both categories.
Exactly.
Okay.
And they're second right now in that category. Barely. And then, so you subtract the numbers and carry the one, and you're left with a plus 10 turnover differential. Here's the point I want to make with this. The Thunder is not after these numbers. Yeah. They're not thinking about them. This isn't something they chase. This isn't an outcome that they're looking for. Coach Dagnall is not writing turnover differential on the whiteboard in the locker room.
This is nice, though.
It is really pretty to look at, and it's a wonderful outcome. But it is downstream from the system that the Thunder wants to play on both ends of the floor, right? Defensively, they want to be disruptive. They want to be problematic. They want to be active, hands in passing lanes, everyone helping each other. All those skill sets, everybody's backing each other up. They're switching like crazy. Anybody that guards you defensively for the Thunder, I'm a little nervous if I have the ball. Yeah. Exactly. And then on the other end of the floor, they want to be a low mistake team. They want to make good decisions, quick decisions. They want to play fast. So they're playing against fewer players on the other end of the floor. That's the goal, right? And so when you put yourself in that position, you end up with beautiful numbers like this. But it's just, in my head, it's so interesting that the Thunder they don't talk about this.
Right.
They're not looking for this, but it is a really solid outcome and a good sense of validation that they're doing things right.
Well, and it should be no surprise that with numbers like this, the Thunder has rattled off 3 wins by over 60 points total in the first 3 games of the season. Because when you talk about turnovers in this way and a turnover differential of plus 10 per game, that's really compounding nature. Because what's the easiest defensive play to score off of? It's forcing a turnover.
Exactly.
I mean, most turnovers are live ball turnovers. And we just know that it's easier to score out in the open floor or when you're not against a set defense. So on both sides of the ball. The Thunder has easier scoring opportunities when it's coming off defense, and the opposing team has fewer of those opportunities to get out and run and score easily in transition. So it's really that compounding nature. Before the season, Sam Presti talked about the compounding nature of the Thunder's defenders and, being able to like stack on top of top. This is all of that coming to fruition in the first week.
This is also 10 more possessions for the Thunder each game. That is an insane, like if you get that each night, you're putting yourself in such a solid situation.
Amazing. Yeah.
And considering the fact that Thunder's also been, offensively, we'll get into this. The first couple of games, they weren't shooting the ball particularly well, but they were racking up all these extra possessions to give themselves opportunities to score on the other end of the floor. It's just a really solid formula for sustainable offense throughout an 82-game season.
Yeah, and that's what this time of year is all about right now. They're building habits. Yeah. It's so interesting. We're going to see and have seen quite a bit of Mark Daigneault putting things out there on the floor that aren't necessarily maybe matchup specific to what they need to like do that night against these first three opponents, but they're things that the Thunder has got to start working on right now because they've got to build those habits over the course of the season and make sure that those things are really sharp and available to them throughout the year when they need to go to them. So they've thrown zone out there like pretty early.
Yeah.
They've
had a little bit of a press too. Little 3/4 court press out there.
Yeah, there wasn't necessarily something about these first three matchups. It was like, we have to go to zone right away in order to win this game tonight. It's like, we've got to invest in some of these team skills so that we have this whole menu at our disposal throughout the course of the year.
Okay, this is an excellent point, and it's a perfect transition into these first three games. We're just going to quickly recap our biggest takeaways from these games. First things first. You remember that time when we were sitting here in this very podcast studio, and we were talking about the fact that the Thunder's opening their preseason with 3 games and 4 nights? Yeah. And we were like, what a wild schedule. Well, here we are. The Thunder's first 3 games of the regular season came in the form of 3 games and 4 nights. Oh, and by the way, they're about to turn around and do it again. And because they're going to play San Antonio here on Wednesday and then go out to the West Coast to play Portland and the Clippers in 3 games and 4 nights. So the first 6 games of the season have been in these kind of tight turnarounds.
Yeah. And so, again, building those muscles. And so the Thunder did a great job in Denver in that season opener. You go into a difficult place to play. Obviously, you're in altitude. You're playing against a veteran team with a crowd that's still charged up.
It's a nationally televised game.
Yeah. It's a later tip-off. There's a lot of different variables and factors that you're having to deal with. And Denver was pretty much in control of that game the first 6 minutes or so. Then the Thunder's second unit came in and really blitzed them. And OKC dominated the rest of that game. The defense was sensational and held the Nuggets to just 35% shooting from the field.
The Thunder won 102-87.
Yeah.
They held the Denver Nuggets to just 87 points. And again, we talked about the really stout defense. What showed up big time was in this game in particular was the help side defense, the communication, the cohesion on that end of the floor. Everything was just clicking together defensively after that first kind of 6 minutes of getting, kind of settled into the game. But the Thunder ultimately forced 17 Denver turnovers. 16, which turned into 11 points on the other end of the floor for OKC. Also held Denver to just 7 of 38 from 3. And that's just a massive number considering the firepower that Denver has offensively.
Yeah, and so much of that came down to physicality.
Yeah.
Of course, at the point of attack as well. But, Nikola Jokic, of course, he had a great game. But Chet Holmgren was out there on the floor with him minute for minute. And, we were there at shoot-around that morning, and that was a part of the discussion was, hey, there's going to be times where we're going to have to go small. No Isaiah Hartenstein, no Jay Will, no Kenrich Williams right now. So the Thunder playing a little bit differently. Ousmane Dieng, who's more of a perimeter player, is the backup 5. So the Thunder matched Chet minute for minute with Nikola Jokic. And Chet got stronger, got more physical, and had more juice at the end of the game than he did at the beginning of the game. It was so impressive.
Coach Daigneault said post-game that was just a really good testament to the work that Chet has put into his body. This season, he's just stronger. And Shea pointed out, you might not see it. It might not show up in terms of just looking at him, but in how he plays, he's taking on contact better. He's giving out contact better. He's really good at just kind of moving his body. Chet said he just feels better out there moving. And it also is a testament to the fact that the man played every single game last season.
Yeah.
That cannot go unnoticed or unsaid because seeing all of those pictures last year, going through all of those experiences, building up the endurance in your body to withstand 100 games basically last year, that's going to put you in a really good position this season to be able to withstand more and more.
Yeah, and you just look at the numbers through the first 3 games. 13 rebounds a game, one of the top marks in the NBA, and 4 blocks a game. You know, he's still getting off the floor the way that he needs to defensively to protect the rim. He's cleaning the glass in a way that he really didn't last year.
Yeah.
And he really attributes that to all that work. He said, you know, if I didn't feel a difference out there, then all that work I did in the summer would have been for nothing. And so he definitely wants to make sure that work is getting paid off.
Yeah, an excellent performance by Chet, who finished with 25 and 14.
Yeah.
Also, 4 blocks and 2 steals.
Yeah,
just
amazing.
All over the floor. The other guy I want to talk about in this Denver Nuggets game, Aaron Wiggins.
Great.
Incredible performance by Aaron Wiggins, who we've talked about a little bit on the pod this season throughout preseason about the Thunder kind of encouraging him to expand his volume offensively, because he's shown, as we've all seen over the course of these last couple of seasons or so, Aaron's role has been really kind of compact, right? And he's had, you know, a specific amount of minutes to play, but he's been incredibly efficient in those minutes. Like, we're talking, he would play 9 minutes, he would have 9 points.
Yeah.
And it would just be like every night it'd be, you get one shot, Aaron makes it. And so the Thunder now, after seeing that consistently over the course of a couple seasons, have allowed him to just kind of expand his role a little bit. He played 20 minutes in that Denver game, 15 points, 7 of 9. That was after going 5 of 5 from the outset. It was just like Aaron Wiggins doing Aaron Wiggins things, and it was so fun to see.
And this is just a great example of somebody who has mastered the Thunder system. Yeah. And, you know, his box is getting a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, because he's shown an immense amount of ability to follow the game plan and execute it. And so for a guy like Aaron, we're going to continue to see fruits of this, because the reason he only took 2 3-point attempts when we talked all preseason about 3-point volume going up for Aaron Wiggins is exactly the reason why the Thunder has been talking about more 3-point volume for Aaron Wiggins, is recognizing if teams start defending that at a higher urgency, that's going to open up more of what the Thunder really, really, really wants to get, which is at the rim.
Get downhill.
So Aaron Wiggins was at the rim pretty much all night in that Nuggets game, because he was blowing by guys who were chasing him out off the 3-point line. You know, OKC will take either one of those things. They'll take a catch and shoot 3 from Aaron Wiggins, where a guy closes out short, or they'll take a guy flying him off the line. And Wiggins has shown the ability over the course of time to really tighten up that dribble and decision making and do good stuff at the rim.
Just great skill set, great growth shown by Aaron Wiggins, and a big key for the Thunder's win in Denver. Yeah. Well, then this team flew out to Chicago. All right. And this was a very different game than the Denver Nuggets game. Obviously, very different teams. Denver, a lot bigger. Yeah. They're, you know, want to play in the half court a little bit more. Chicago wants to run. They just want to run. Yeah. If they could play with a 14-second shot clock, they would do it. They want to get out and run.
They spent the preseason using a 14-second shot clock instead of a 24-second shot clock. Yeah.
And so this group, they want to play with pace. They want to get out in the open floor. And what was interesting in this game is you could tell that Chicago wanted to play that way. But kind of after that first quarter or so, the Thunder were in complete control of the pace of the game. But let's not forget, the Thunder wants to play fast too. So it was a very fast-paced game, but it almost felt like it was the Thunder telling Chicago we want to play fast versus Chicago telling the Thunder.
Yeah, it was kind of like, we're going to slow you down so that we can then play fast. And the Thunder's defense, once again, sensational. The turnover numbers in this game were really off the chart. Just, you know, once a season big, 26 turnovers forced. That resulted in 21 points directly for the Thunder. And again, it seemed like this Thunder team just wore them down, those perimeter ball handlers. And the Bulls have a ton of them. I mean, between Zach LaVine and Kobe White and Josh Giddey and Lonzo Ball, who, you know, welcome back, Lonzo. It's a great story that he's back. But those guys were really harassed all night by the Thunder. and they couldn't get much of anything going either. Yet again, OKC holds them to really low shooting from behind the arc, 15 of 53. That's below 30% and below 35% from the field.
Another incredible defensive performance. And then on the other end of the floor, the Thunder had 3 players with 20 or more points. Chet Holmgren with another double-double in this game, 21 and 16. But then you had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with 23 and 8. And then you had Jalen Williams, J-Dub, with 24, 9, and 8, a near triple-double. It was just a very egalitarian offensive performance by the Thunder.
Yeah, J-Dub was spectacular in that game. And Chet, once again, I mean, look at the lineup of bigs that Chet Holmgren had to deal with in the first 3 games.
Good point.
Jokic, Nikola Vucevic, who is massive, and then Clint
Capella,
Capella, who's a really big cover to deal with. I mean, he's just huge. And for Chet to come away the better of those 3 guys in the first 3 games of the season, I mean, that is a massive developmental step forward for Chet Holmgren.
I also want to point out, so in the Denver game, we talked about how Denver only shot 18% from the 3-point line. The Thunder only shot 22% from the 3-point line. Against the Bulls only shot 28% from 3. The Thunder only shot 20% from 3. So the 3-point shot was not an element. It was not a factor for the Thunder's offense. And yet, this is what makes this so key. The defense, allowing the Thunder to put points on the board in other ways, and also really slowing down the opposing team, slowing down their offense so that the Thunder's offense can just keep doing what it's doing. And it's just really cool to see that there's sustainability to this. And it's something that you can control every night. The defensive effort, the defensive energy, the cohesion, communication, that can happen any night. And you can get all the best shots in the world. And this is something the Thunder's talked about. When we get into Atlanta, we'll talk about this a little bit more. But the Thunder's process offensively in those first 2 games were yielding really high quality looks. This is something that the Thunder tracks every single game. They don't look at how many threes the Thunder shot per se. What they're focused on is the quality of the looks. That means the contestedness, where the shot was taken, who took it, how it came in the shot, in the flow of the offense, right? And in these 2 games, the Thunder had really high quality looks from 3. They just didn't fall.
Right.
And that's something that you can't control. But their defense is something that they can always control. And that's what allowed them to really stay ahead in these games.
Yeah, and you just look at what they're doing in terms of process, and then you flip that forward to the game in Atlanta at home. We'll talk about that as well. But you've got to be able to maintain that same process and understand that the results are going to come over the course of an 82-game season. And again, leaning on the defense is an excellent point. When you think about Atlanta, it's hard not to think about that tough travel that we had coming back.
We got to talk about it.
Yeah. Team left Chicago. Normally, you get home 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. Tough for a second night of a back-to-back, but not horrible. Well, unfortunately, the team had about a 2-hour delay on the tarmac in Chicago. Didn't land until about 4 o'clock in the morning.
4 a.m.
That is really atypical of what any team has to experience on the second night of a back-to-back. But the Thunder, bleary-eyed that they might be, showed up on that Sunday and had that home opener, great energy at Paycom Center. And again, by the end of that game in the 4th quarter, it seemed like the Thunder was the team that was fresh and energized and not the one on the second night of a back-to-back.
It really felt like the intensity for this group just continued to grow as the game went on, which is really important because, I mean, this was a game where the 3-point line did play a factor because obviously Atlanta, a team that can light it up. You got a guy like Trae Young who can shoot it from when he steps off the bus. And then the Thunder, those shots started to fall. 16 threes in this game, shot it at 40% from 3. And it was kind of a game of runs. If you look at the final score, 128-104, it looks like the Thunder were in control for the majority of the game. Not the case. There were a lot of chapters to this story.
Yes, there were.
The Thunder got out to a little bit of it was kind of a, back and forth game in the first quarter. It wasn't until the end of the second quarter that the Thunder went on this massive, and this was such a fun run.
Yeah.
Especially opening night, it is a full Paycom Center crowd. And then all of a sudden, you get 3 defensive stops. Now it's a 9-0 run. And then J-Dub with this massive putback at the buzzer at halftime. Yeah. The crowd goes crazy. And you could just feel there was like a palpable shift in momentum in that game. And that was where I feel like the Thunder got their spark and they were able to kind of keep that momentum going for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and it was still a tight game throughout the 3rd quarter. And in fact, Atlanta took a 1-point lead in the opening minutes of the 4th quarter. And so again, you're thinking like, we're going to get time on the floor where, this game is just way out of hand when you're a 1-point game at the beginning of the fourth quarter. And just all of a sudden, it was a 13-0 Thunder run in the early stages of that fourth quarter. And it was just steal. Cason Wallace twice rips Trae Young at the top of the key. And this is just stuff that you don't see. The Thunder forced Trae Young into 10 turnovers in this game. Young had half of the Hawks turnovers in the game. And 2 of them just right out top with a second-year guard. Straight up just grabbing the ball from him.
Sidebar.
Yeah.
This is something that was also a nominee for my stat of the week. Cason Wallace tied for second in the NBA in deflections. Total deflections.
Okay.
He's got 16 of them. And Alex Caruso also in the top 15. I think he's 12th or so. He's like tied with like 8 guys right now. But Cason Wallace, another guy similar to Chet, who is just a vastly different player now than he was this time last season. Another guy who played in every single game last season, played in very meaningful minutes for the Thunder, and you're seeing all of that show up this season. And it was something that I noticed during preseason, Nick. It felt like his anticipation was a lot quicker. He was getting out to passing lanes faster. He was noticing things before they happened. And I feel like those 2 steals at the top of the key were a really good indication that Cason Wallace is a lot sharper, a lot quicker, and just a much more anticipatory player this season.
Yeah, he has been called just a smarter player by some of his teammates this year. He feels way more confident. He said is a massive jump in his confidence between last year and this year. And look, he's got 8 steals in the first 3 games of the season. That puts him right there at the very top of the heap. Actually, Shea has 9. Which is hard to believe that one of his teammates has more. But that's just how this team is right now.
Let's also talk about those steals because Cason's are typically on-ball steals,
Yes,
right?
That's right.
Shea is like a in the back lurking, right? Just like a free safety, picking things off as, his perimeter defenders are just wreaking havoc on the ball. He's like, I got your back and I'm going to pick this off. This cross-court pass is not happening.
Or like using football terminology. I love it.
I've learned from the best. That was not my own doing. But he's also, it's so fun to watch. It's really fun to watch. And those post-entry passes.
Yes,
Shea has gotten a lot of those.
Yeah, really baiting those passes. And the Thunder, if you'll notice, a lot of times they're fronting the post and just relying on quickness, speed, athleticism, and frankly, daring the opposing team to be able to fit that pass over the top in the tightest and narrowest of windows. It's just, it seems like you're maybe giving up something when you front the post like that. The Thunder really seems to look at it as like, that is a higher degree of difficulty play for the opposing team to try to make. And with the way that these guys swarm and the instincts that they have off the ball, the Thunder's been able to generate a lot of steals. Even a rookie like AJ Mitchell, he pulled that off in Chicago.
He really did.
Yeah.
And this is what's so fun to watch is that the activity defensively, it is exhausting. I feel for these opponents because they're probably just like, they're everywhere all the time. And it might be a smaller lineup, quote unquote, but these guys have positional size.
Yeah.
You think of a guy like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Aaron Wiggins, Jalen Williams. These guys have a lot of length out there. And when their hands are out, their arms are up, there are not a lot of easy passing lanes that you can make out there. Yeah,
I mean, every inch matters in the NBA, but when a guy is 6'6", 6'7", the way that those 3 guys that you mentioned are, like, they're gonna bother people.
Yes.
Even if they're 6'10" or 6'11", it's like those guys, if you're good and if you're tough to defend or tough to play against, like that's something Mark Daigneault said. He's like, we just want to be tough to score on.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily matter like what the size of these guys are. Sam Presti said like Isaiah Hartenstein, who we haven't seen yet in this regular season. But they said, like, look, if he was 6'5", if he was 6'6", we'd still want him on the team because of the way he plays.
Good point.
That's how you think about these guys.
And so all of this to say, we have seen some really, really good, impressive performances by the Thunder over the first 3 games of the season. I will reiterate, this is the first 3 games of the season. Yeah. There are still 79 of these games left to play. And there are going to be a lot of ups, a lot of downs, plateaus. The sky's going to be falling on this team every once in a while. But what has been such a strong first impression is the consistency that we've seen on the defensive end of the floor, the effort, the energy, the intensity, all of that been so fun and really encouraging to see early on.
And now the challenge is you've got to turn around and do this again when you have 4 games in 6 nights. So San Antonio coming up at home, that's going to be a late tip off. Then you go out to the West Coast, Portland for the first night of a back-to-back. the day after Halloween.
Yep.
Then you go fly to LA and you have that first game for the Thunder in the Intuit Dome against the LA Clippers. Will be fun to see another team kind of opening up a new arena, just knowing what we have on the horizon coming up in the next few years. So that's really exciting. And then you come back home for one game and you're playing on Monday against the Orlando Magic when you come home. So it's like a stretch of 3 games in 4 nights and then another stretch of 3 games in 4 nights. So really that's how the Thunder has opened up the season is 3 different stretches of 3 games in 4 nights.
This is also where the lineup rotation and the flexibility comes into play because it allows you to play guys who might be a little bit more fresh, might have more legs under them. It allows you to give guys a little bit of a breather because all these skill sets are so interchangeable and guys can kind of, you can spread things a little bit, farther across more players.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking, I don't think nobody has played more than 36 minutes in any of these games so far this season. And that's huge.
Massive.
I mean, you have to try to build up that equity and put some, as Michael Cage would say, put a little money in the bank for yourself as you can go throughout the course of the season.
And it's been so fun to watch this team, and it makes you really excited for what's on the horizon for this group and what we'll see for the rest of this season. But that wraps up our podcast today. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Thank you so much to our producer, Matt Bishop. And until next time, Thunder up and catch you later.